The Skid Road Oral History Project is a collection of oral history interviews of people working and living at the intersection of health and homelessness in Seattle, King County, Washington. In June of 2015, I interviewed Eric Seitz at the Jack Straw Cultural Center in Seattle. He had this to say in response to my question, what led you to the work that you do?
Going towards high school and getting into my late teens, I did find myself on the streets and was homeless myself for a while, for many years actually, and basically that got um, like the conditions around that got a lot worse for me. It was a lot harder to survive. I got involved with the drug use, and that was very hard to be on the streets, but also then have to have a gigantic drug habit that you had to maintain on a daily basis. So that's kind of when things really spiraled downhill for me. And eventually I landed in Harborview Medical Center for a necrotizing soft tissue infection that was related to intramuscular heroin use. And it was basically because of that I received that infection that came really close to killing me. And they said that they were going to have to definitely amputate my leg, which thankfully none of those things happened. So after that, I just had such a positive experience with the medical people in Harborview, especially the nurses there and the PT and OT staff, that they really inspired me to kind of go into that work and to consider the role that I could actually play in people's lives that were going through similar situations that I was. So basically, since the day I got out of the hospital, I really was turned on to the idea of nursing specifically, and just trying to take it day by day, and trying to do things that I could do, and trying to look at things I could do immediately to help. So I would just continue volunteering, particularly in harm reduction programs like needle exchange, and did that. I think I started Christmas Day of 2009, and basically did that on a regular basis every week, up to today. And it's about 6 years later, so that's something that I've always really it's always been a huge part of my life, is doing something for underserved populations, but also doing something that you're not getting paid for, specifically not because I just like the values behind that, like doing this kind of work and seeing it as an avocation and something that you actually want to do, and seeing the enrichment that is not just getting a paycheck. And I think that's added a lot more to my life than the idea of getting a job to just get rich, but have my basic needs met, but still be able to reach out to the community that I was very deeply embedded in. So that's kind of how I arrived to that place right now.
So, still working, volunteering with needle exchange, and you kind of see that as something that you'll continue
Yeah,
in the future?
yeah, because when I did that for a couple years here in the University District, at their needle exchange program, but then I wanted to get more public health education, so that's why I went across the mountains over the Cascades to Ellensburg to do a public health degree first before nursing school. So I did that, and I worked with the needle exchange over there, the county needle exchange in Kittitas County, and we helped start like a rural, like mobile health, or a mobile needle exchange program up in Upper Kittitas County, and did that for a while. Did a lot of like jail and inmate education for STDs and HIV and Hep C, all that kind of stuff. And since I've been back in Seattle for nursing school, I haven't worked in needle exchange, but I've been working with underserved populations, specifically homeless youth, at the 45th Street Clinic. And so that's the thing that I'm still doing today. I'd like to get back into harm reduction and needle exchange stuff specifically, but I think that I've kind of realized that my role, I want to expand it into other areas that not only include needle exchange, but also street access, and just street outreach nursing to people, like wherever they are. I mean, the street outreach nurses that are in Seattle, even though they're few, really inspire me. And that's kind of where I'm looking forward to now, because I always thought that finishing nursing school would be the pinnacle of like all of my self-realizations will have been achieved at that point, and then life will be perfect. And then you realize, like, once you get to the top of that mountain, there's like a vista that you can see another gigantic mountain. And I've really kind of realized the idea of just enjoying the journey and making sure that that's the goal, not that there's some destination in which you'll find perfection or enlightenment.
Right. So tell me more about the other mountain that you see in the distance now. What does that look like to you?
For me, it's just the mountain is just to really appreciate taking the moment in day by day and not having to see the top of the mountain. But that's pretty much impossible for me because I'm really goal oriented. Um, but I do, like I said, wanted to continue in street outreach nursing or wherever the world takes me. I've kind of found that if I just take one step at a time and leave opportunities open, that cool things will come into my world, and I'll just pursue those as they come. And that hasn't failed me so far. Um, I don't know. It's a hard question. I'd really like to get more into advocacy work and more of the systems level work, which I think I've already been doing in small steps, but I'd really like to do more things working with like health and racial disparities too. So I'm trying to find opportunities to get more involved with that as well.
Okay. I think you've kind of mentioned it a little bit in terms of like the Harborview experience when you landed in Harborview.
Hmm.
That it sounds as if that was kind of a turning point for you in terms of your life and your career.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit more about that? Of like, was there a time, a specific interaction at all when you started seeing that there could be something different for you?
Yeah, because I had always really drifted through life during homelessness pretty apathetic, or at least ambivalent towards my situation. I didn't really think that I didn't really care about living or dying, which is a weird place to be. Like I really did typify the hungry ghost kind of ideology. Like I didn't really care. I didn't think that even dying was going to happen to me. Like I just thought I was not invincible, but it just didn't really come to my mind. But when I realized, because I had woken up in Harborview after being in a coma for about a month, um, and I remember really deeply in my heart feeling the sense that it just got real, and that I can't just run away from this. I can't just go like move to a different city. Um, I can't avoid it through drugs anymore because just can't do that. Um, and it just basically I had to sit in that suffering for a while and be okay with feeling feelings again. And that was very odd for me because I knew how to take care of feelings, which was to avoid them through other behaviors. Um, but after a while, then just seeing the nurses and the doctors and all the other people at Harborview work with me and talk to me like humans, I really started to realize that it is something that I could do. And it seemed like an insurmountable task to actually get there. But it was the moment that I realized that I really wanted to just devote my life to that was one of the nurses. I don't remember what her name was or what she even looks like at this point, but she said something really simple, probably kind of jokingly that I would be a good candidate for nursing school,
Mm.
and then I should go do that, and then we'll give you a job afterwards. And I really took that literally, and I think that has inspired me. Not that I expect Harborview to just go and hire me just for arbitrary reasons like that, but I think that that has been something that has hugely motivated me to realize that I have self-importance and that I have self-love, and that's why self-care is so huge for me, because if I lose sight of that, it's kind of like a part of my identity would slip away, I feel.
Okay, so you felt like she said it a little bit offhandedly, but you took
Hmm.
it seriously. So she
Yeah.
wasn't. So it came across as if she really felt like you could actually do that. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. That's a really good way to put it, because and that's still carried with me today, where if I'm talking to somebody, I really want to be completely present and engaged with them and give them the honor that the moment deserves, and to notice those little simple things, and that something small you can say can really have a huge, like, deep spiritual or emotional impact on somebody. So that's kind of definitely come with me, and that's why I've also realized the importance of community and psychiatric care and nursing.
Right. And you just graduated
Yeah,
from University of Washington School
apparently.
of Nursing. So congratulations.
Yeah.
So go back a little bit. The Hungry Ghost. Tell me what that felt like to you.
Hmm.
What was the Hungry Ghost?
Um, it's interesting because I think I mentioned before it was very hard to really identify any specific moments within that time period, but like I do have very specific sensory, like tactile sensations that I actually remember and what that felt like emotionally or physically. Um, I think that at first when I was younger and starting out on that, it was more of like a rebellious kind of wanting freedom and independence and autonomy kind of thing. And I did have that for quite a while, but then, as things got ramped up a little bit more, it ended up just being really lonely because I'm a solitary person, and I am today and I was back then. And it's hard when you don't have any kind of human contact or interaction for years at a time. It just like really wears on your soul. I don't like, no matter who you are. And I think I remember that loneliness feeling, um, and that deep void that I felt in my body that I had to kind of satiate. I think that was the addiction, but among other things. And then also the one thing that I remember the most is when you would be coming off of like an opiate or something and you're very physically ill, you're emotionally ill, um, and really kind of know exactly what you can do to make that better, but you just don't have the resources to do that because of whether or not you burned all your bridges or you just don't have the energy. And there's many times where I would wake up, like on a church stoop or something, and kind of wake up in the morning when the birds are chirping and it's just the dawn is starting to come up and it's raining a little bit, but it's freezing, and you're in a cold jail blanket that's soaking wet on the concrete, and your bones are hurting, and really depressed. And it just like you just don't really even care about getting up. You're okay with just sitting there in that moment because you can't do anything else. And just that feeling of losing all hope, but just kind of rolling with it, is a very hard place to be. And it's hard to actually see a way out of it at that point.
So when you were out there, when you were on that like cold stoop and trying to figure out, right, and as you said, you weren't really caring about life or death. Were there any times that people reached out to you? Like you said that the street outreach part of it is important to you now, in terms
Hmm.
of the giving side of it. Did you have any interactions like that when you were living on the streets?
Yeah, I mean, my family was trying to stick with me for as long as they could because they were amazing people. It was more of like my own myself that wanted to run away, so they were there. But eventually, I kind of burned those bridges that they had to take care of their mental health too, so they had to disconnect. So that wasn't really an option anymore. Um, and I had no interaction with really any medical or healthcare services. I didn't ever see outreach people, um, probably because I was intentionally trying to hide for the most part. Um, but there were some places like drop-in centers that I would go to occasionally, um, like the old PSKS when it was
Hmm.
on Capitol Hill, um, over there kind of by Olive. And I would go in there and maybe get a sandwich, but then people, like a social worker, would want to talk to me, and I would just flip them off and leave. But there are other cool people that were really selfless in their actions, and I think one of these guys still does that, just in a different capacity. But he would just on Sunday evenings, he would just drive his van on Broadway when it was a lot less busy, and just park it on the side right where the all the light rail stuff is going in right now. And he would just sit there and hand out bagged lunches and sandwiches, and people would just sit on the sidewalk there and get fed. And that was something that was really huge to me, and I got the opportunity to like thank him for that a couple years ago because he was still doing it.
Nice. So he was just
So
doing it on his own.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
just I don't. It wasn't like anything that was religiously affiliated. It was just this guy who wanted to do this, and that meant a lot to me. Like even at my mind state that I was in back then, it was like really huge and reliable. And that's kind of another thing that I found that's hugely important with, especially youth, or anybody really living on the streets, is the continuity and just being reliable and being somebody that they can count on as far as relationship building. That's more important than anything else. It's just like when you're going to do something, like follow your word and say you're going to do it. Don't just flake off.
Right.
So that's huge.
And so did you find that when you were at Harborview as well? Did that seem to like to carry through as something that was important to you with the staff?
Yeah, that was important to me because I saw it in both ways. I mean, there's obviously really great nurses. There's some that might not be so great in that area.
Hmm.
They might be great clinical people, but they're not like so good with communication skills or like empathy at all. And then there was things that would happen that I would see that irked me as well, like because the situation I was in Harborview was like I was very dependent on everybody. You know, I was in the ICU for quite a while, and then in the step down unit while I was recovering, and like couldn't walk. Like I was dependent on people for my toileting needs and food and anything else that I would need. And there'd be times where, you know, people wouldn't answer the call light for like an hour at sometimes, and where it was like a emergent, you know, like a bathroom emergency or something like
Right.
that, and then like you just deal with it, and then it gets really messy after that. So,
Mm.
and it's kind of a humbling place to be, and just the pain involved with that when like the physical pain I was going through is extreme, but like something as far as somebody just sitting down on the bed and like actually getting to my level and actually looking me in the eye or putting their name on the whiteboard to remind me what their name was and other little fun stuff like that was the most important stuff that even like than some of the more complicated medical stuff, because sometimes people wouldn't do that and I wouldn't know who my nurse was for a day at a time.
So those seemingly little things, like
Yeah.
just knowing who the person is and they put their names on, were really
Yeah,
important to
and I've
you.
noticed that while also working with underserved and homeless individuals in a clinical capacity now, that like I'll always offer that empathetic listening and you know kind of more of the motivational interviewing stuff. But like, because I mean I liked that, but that doesn't necessarily mean other people are going to appreciate that as much either. But I'll put it out there if they don't, if they just are hostile towards me, I'll let that go and not take it personally. That's all you have to do, you know. It's just kind of go through things. For me, not taking it personally and just giving the effort and just being there, like always being there.